more fraud and abuse exposed as the Environmental Protection Agency reveals President Biden awarded $2 billion buried in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act to a climate group tied to one of his most loyal supporters and friends, former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. The EPA now trying to claw that money back, which is part of a larger $20 billion.
Tell that big greasy heifer, put your hands behind your back. Hey, big greasy gal, put your hands behind your back.
Want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Hey.
Why this beat so cold?
We will make America proud again. And you try to kill our citizens. We will make America wealthy again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Administrator, can you explain what the heck happened here and how another slush fund has been exposed?
So this is $2 billion of that $20 billion that was parked at this bank outside of government towards the end of the Biden administration. Power Forward Communities, which Stacey Abrams is part of, only received $100 in 2023. They then got $2 billion in this grant in 2024. Put your hands behind your back. Now, I was just reading over the grant agreement, Laura. On the first page, it gives the organization, this nonprofit, 21 days to distribute $2 billion. But this is the crazy part. I went to page 7 of the grant agreement, and it's giving the entity 90 days to complete a training called How to Develop a Budget. Now, I would say that if an organization needs to take a training on how to develop a budget, one, they should be taking the training before they're spending $1, but they definitely shouldn't be getting $2 billion.
I mean, wow, $2 billion. I still can't wrap my head around that. And then, of course, what exactly was this so-called nonprofit even about? Was it money that was going to the black community, creating jobs and providing value, helping people get ahead in life and rebuilding communities? You know, the people that Stacey Abrams claimed to be fighting for her entire career.
See, they sent our money way over here for their schools that were never even built. So, and then also so they can see Elmo do jumping jacks in the middle of the street. I'm saying they ought to go. Man, I'm telling you. I'm not even gonna say that on camera. They'll just take the video down. I ain't gonna say it, man. Yeah, buddy. I'm glad this is all coming out. I'm glad a lot of things are getting exposed. And that Doge is doing all this digging. That we're getting exactly what we voted for. I'm telling you, I'm with y'all. We should all be hotter than fish grease. And I think everybody, let's go down the list. It needs a nice fat audit investigation. Everybody. And stole my people's money. Them hard working patriots with blood, sweat, and tears. Our elderly still got to work. Homeless veterans. I'm finna get pissed off in this thing, man. Blood, sweat, and tears. People got to die, man. Well, Rick, that's how life goes. Man, I don't want to hear that right now, man. I don't want to hear that. And this corrupt scam matrix, man. And it's a lot of corruption and a lot of scamming that's been going on. People that have been spit on. You know? Lost the people's trust. Trump administration, let's turn that thing around. Because they lost the people's trust. Y'all can give us hope now. Y'all giving us hope now y'all giving us that we can be able to trust again.
This is a very important time, y'all. I want y'all to understand this, you know. This is a very important time. We're living in the biggest history yet, man. The biggest history yet. And we only 30-some days in. And you see what all has come out. And the transparency that we are finally getting. Lists are going to be exposed. I mean, it's all coming out, man. This is a very, very important time, and we need it to take place. And they ought to abolish. I'm ready for that breaking news so I can make a video on it. Breaking news everywhere, headlines everywhere. Trump administration abolishes the IRS, abolishes taxes, income tax. I mean, all of it, property tax, all this crap, man. People don't own nothing. Everything is temporary, huh? People don't own nothing. And then you just got to die. Sorry I'm talking so much, y'all. I'm pissed off, though, man. You know? And I want to see people in handcuffs right now. I want to see arrests made right now. Right now.
Nope, it was an environmental nonprofit. You literally cannot make this stuff up. Since when is Stacey Abrams an expert in the environment and environmental phenomenons? This woman's
Introducing the Filter Sorb Whole House Water Conditioner.
Entire career has been grifting about racial politics, and suddenly she's a leading voice and the head of a massive $2 billion environmental nonprofit? Give me a break. It's obvious what's going on here. The grift is so blatant, mainly because it follows the exact same pattern every single time with these Democrats. There's always a branding misrepresentation. They don't just hand out taxpayer money to their political allies. Of course, that would be stupid. They disguise it under feel-good nonsense, like environmental research and sustainability, equity, community investment, DEI, anti-racism. That way, anybody who questions where the money is actually going instantly gets labeled as anti-science, racist, or of course, against progress. It's a total joke, and it's the same thing they do when they present bills to the floor. Name the bill something like the Saving the World's Children from Starvation Act, and then of course, anybody who looks into it, anybody who raises any concerns, any criticism, instantly is labeled as being evil and doesn't care about the kids. And that tactic, frankly, has worked for a very long time. It's been used as a shield for these Democrats. Well, I guess until today, because now we have people like Lee Zeldin coming along and starting to pull up the receipts, looking into this funneling of money. And I guess now moving forward, the grift is completely exposed and up. Does anybody truthfully believe that Stacey Abrams is first of all deserving of this position, but secondly, was doing anything of actual real value with this money? Do we truthfully believe that this $2 billion nonprofit is saving the environment? I mean, come on. It's simply a taxpayer grift. And how exactly does $2 billion go to Stacey Abrams' nonprofit with zero oversight? How has nobody been aware of this for the last however many years that this has been going on? You know what it feels like to me? It feels like a payoff. Stacey Abrams has been the Democrat Party's goon in Georgia for years. She spent every election cycle crying about voter suppression, running sketchy voter registration operations, which some people claim were linked to ballot harvesting operations. A lot of people credit Stacey Abrams' work to being very beneficial to the Democrats and their, let's call it, election endeavors. Stacey Abrams, I guess, scratched their back, and then this feels like they're returning the favor, scratching her back in return. And now actually, here's the best part. Supposedly, this $2 billion in funding for her nonprofit is just the tip of the iceberg. Apparently, there's another $18 billion sitting in that same account, conveniently set up by Biden's team in the final days of his presidency. Very interesting. It's almost as if this moving of money is part of some massive organized slush fund meant to funnel billions of dollars to their political allies just days before Trump took office. It's just unbelievable, and when you're talking about funds of this level being moved to Democrat-linked organizations, there just has to be a good explanation. Otherwise, the only logical assumption, the only conclusion that I'm leaping towards is pure corruption and money funneling to their allies. Of course, always under the guise of some feel-good program that's supposedly providing all kinds of value that the left can never actually quantify or explain. I mean, honestly, this ought to put it into perspective.
$520 million was given for a consultant to do ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investments in Africa. $520 million, $25 million to promote biodiversity, conservation, and
we don't even know what the hell
responsibility behavior in.
Don't know what none of that is, man. I ain't lying to you. I'm telling you, 90% of the stuff on this list that they've been reading off of, and of what the money, where all these funds, we don't know what none of this is, man. So you got doggone right, I'm hotter than fish grease. Got people sitting in Social Security 300 years old. Unbelievable. 150 years old, 170 years old.
The country of Colombia, $25 million, $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. They have no place in particular they were thinking of. There is no location. The money was sent out, but they have no idea where it's going. $42 million for social and behavior changes in Uganda, and $10 million for Mozambique medical male circumcision. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $486 million to a consortium for elections and political process strengthening, which $22 million was for inclusive participatory political process in Moldova, and $21 million going to my friend, Prime Minister Modi in India, for voter turnout. We're giving $21 million for voter turnout in India. What about us? I want voter turnout too, Governor. $29 million to strengthen the political landscape in Bangladesh. Went to a firm that nobody ever heard of. They got a check. Can you imagine? You have a little firm, you get 10,000 here, 10,000 there. And then we get $29 million from the United States government. There are 2 people working in that firm. 2 people. I think they're very happy. They're very rich. They'll be on the cover of a very good business magazine pretty soon. $20 million for fiscal federalism, and $19 million for biodiversity in Nepal, and $47 million.
How our president's actually reading this crap out. That's how disgraceful it is, man. Yeah. Here's your transparent. Our president's sitting there reading it out. No, we see Doge is digging, and a lot is coming up. A lot of corruption is being exposed. But there needs to be arrest. There needs to be people with their hands behind their back. That's how y'all know how we say it, family. You got to put your hands behind your back. Somebody need. I need to see a live broadcast or something soon. Please, of somebody being walked out. Of somebody being walked out. I don't care who it is first on the list. Somebody on that list, and especially this lady here. Because this is. Let's get into it, family.
Buried in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act to a climate group tied to one of his most loyal supporters and friends, former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. The EPA now trying to claw that money back, which is part of a larger $20 billion held at an outside financial institution. The money distributed as part of the $739 billion Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by congressional Democrats and signed into law by President Biden in 2022. Joining me now is the EPA Administrator, Lee Zeldin. EPA Administrator Zeldin, great to have you.
Scam. Just a scam. And they, you know what? I think the first one on the list, they ought to go arrest the one that a lot of this all revolves around. The one who didn't give himself a pardon. The so-called president, when the man really, our president won 3 elections, so Biden ought to be arrested, walked out with his hands behind his back. Didn't even give himself a pardon. They ought to go get him first.
This morning, thank you for being here. I want to get your take on what you've been doing this weekend. So let me get to the Stacey Abrams money in a moment. Tell us what you've been able to do just in the last 2 days.
Working with Doge. We just cut another 21 grants heading towards DEI and environmental justice, saving the American taxpayers another $67 million. This is in our first round of cuts to find these efficiencies. So this partnership with DOJ has been outstanding. We want the EPA to be operating as efficiently as possible and exceptionally accomplishing our mission. We're on track.
Well, let's talk about this outrageous finding that you have had in terms of $2 billion stashed away in the Inflation Reduction Act and sent to Stacey Abrams' linked climate group. Tell me about it.
Maria, this group in 2023 only received $100. This isn't even like it's a longtime group that has some reputation of handling large budgets. They received $2 billion in 2024. On page 1 of the grant agreement, it tells them that they have 21 days to distribute all $2 billion. And on page 7 of the grant agreement, it is giving them 90 days to complete a training called How to Develop a Budget. I would say that any entity that needs training on how to develop a budget shouldn't be actually distributing money before they take that training, and they certainly shouldn't be receiving $2 billion to be distributing that rapidly. What we've seen is a lot of self-dealing, a lot of conflicts of interest, and instead of spending tens of billions of dollars wisely and maintaining accountability and having oversight, instead they were rushing to just, as they said in a December video that was leaked by a Biden EPA political appointee, they were throwing gold bars off the Titanic. We found the gold bars and we want them back.
Unbelievable. The money is being held at what? Citigroup? Why can't you get your hands on that money and claw it back?
This is something that the Justice Department's been working with Citibank on. There's a financial agent agreement with Treasury, an account control agreement with EPA and the primary recipients in the bank. But this is something that the Justice Department has been asking a lot of questions of us. I appreciate their diligence on behalf of the American taxpayer and working with our agency to ensure that we can reestablish that accountability and oversight over these funds. Had a great conversation last night with the president on the topic, again, with Russ Vought, our new head of the Office of Management and Budget. Multiple agencies working to ensure that this funding is not wasted. We're going to go through a process. Unfortunately, Citibank is cooperating with the Justice Department.
Mm-hmm. So was there criminality here?
That's a question for the Justice Department to answer. I would say that it's a clear-cut case of waste and abuse. The entire scheme, in my opinion, is criminal. I'll give you one other example. There are only 8 primary recipients that received all $20 billion. I told you we're just discussing the Stacey Abrams link one that got $2 billion. The director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund gave $5 billion to his former employer. So he leaves one of these funds, becomes the director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and then gives $5 billion to his former employer. I wish I could tell you that this was the end of it. We're talking about pass-throughs, giving to other entities, many respects, those are pass-throughs. And the EPA, in writing, tying our hands behind our back to ensure that we would have as little oversight as possible.
Wow. And you've got tons of rules and regulations that were put into effect under the Biden administration as it hid all of its regulations behind the whole cloud of environmental issues, right? I mean, at the EPA, how much cutting are you doing in terms of rules and regulations throughout government, by the way, not just the EPA?
President Trump campaigned on this. The American public spoke loudly and clearly, and the Supreme Court has weighed in too with the Loper Bright case. They don't want, and agencies should not, be coming up with their own interpretations of what law is. We should be following our obligations under the law. We should be respecting the rule of law. We should be advancing cooperative federalism. It's time to go back to the basics to ensure we are delivering clean air, land, and water, but we are also unleashing energy dominance in this country, and we are powering the great American comeback. That's the priority at the EPA under President Trump.